Take a pit stop for all things NASCAR with the Four Tire Change podcast. Here is your host, Dawson Iserlo.
It's Four Tire Change podcast, ESPN Southwest Louisiana. Dawson Iserlo back with you again. Another really interesting race weekend, right, on the NASCAR Cup Series side of things. If you wouldn't mind, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think in another, interesting week, as I said. The Chicago Street Course, third iteration of it. I don't want to say lived up to the hype, lived up to the experience. Like, I'm struggling to kind of put into context, like, where we are with this street course race, right? But all in all, I do think there was a lot of elements of it that were really cool. I think they clearly worked out some of the kinks here in the first couple of years. From what I understand, like, this was a less intensive process. They actually kind of walked back some of the peripheral stuff, like the concerts and things of that nature. NASCAR did, and maybe it wasn't quite as expensive and time in consuming to do all the stuff that they did. But I've enjoyed it. The idea, like, maybe it's run its course, no pun intended, right? Being called the street course. I could understand that as well. There are talks that they're going to go to San Diego in the future or next year, and I think that would maybe make sense. I don't think I'd want both of them on the schedule. I think one street course race is probably plenty. But I do like the idea, and I know Chase Elliott floated this out there, like, maybe going to multiple different places. I was listening to the teardown, and I think those guys gave some good perspective. Like, you don't want to go 1 year and then pull it and go somewhere else, because you kind of need to build the momentum so that the locals kind of understand, oh, yeah, this is a really cool event that happened. Like, maybe I'll check that out next time it happens. And ideally, that's just next year and not 5 years down the road, right? So I think, look, street course racing, they pulled it off. It's possible. The opportunities will continue, I think. But also, that might have been the last iteration in Chicago, and if it was, like, I'm okay with that. I think we'll be okay, right? As for the actual racing, look, SVG's unbelievable. He is quickly rising the ranks as far as, the most accomplished road course racers in NASCAR history. I know that sounds kind of crazy to say, but, like, think about the percentage he's got, the winning percentage. It's unreal. And, to go out there, he wins the Xfinity race. This race, the start of it too, McDowell takes the lead, and you're thinking, all right, McDowell had some comments, previous, like, hey, maybe SVG's beatable. Like, we plan to give him our best bet. It's funny, too, to look back at this, and, of course, like, man, I just feel for Spire and McDowell. He has, some trouble there. Car ends up kind of breaking down on him when he really looked like he had a legitimate chance to challenge for a win and a playoff spot and everything like that. I did think it was fascinating, though. SVG, asked about it post-race, was kind of like, yeah, I was biding my time, like, that's basically what he said. He's kind of like, yeah, like, I felt like we were okay, So, he really, the thing that blows me away is he doesn't make mistakes, right? And as this race is playing out and you've got, the fresher tires towards the end trying to run him down, you keep looking for, like, okay, is maybe they're going to be a little slip up for Shane. And it never happens. Like, you have to go take it from him. And I'm sure at some point, like, the mistake will happen. It's not like he's perfect, but he really, really makes it tough on these guys. And every restart, and it feels like every corner, he is getting the most out of his car consistently. And, just going up against the best drivers in the world, as we talk about, and beating them square, fair and square. So it was fascinating. I do have to talk about the officiating. I couldn't believe that they made a couple of the decisions they made. Like, I understand about the first caution that was called due to an ambulance on the track, right? And I will say this. Should they have created, and basically, what I'm talking about is there was a caution call, everybody looked up and went, what's the caution for? And then we found out, well, there's an emergency vehicle that needs to cross the track because there's a fan in the infield that needs attendance too, and there's basically no way for that emergency vehicle to get across a live track, obviously, unless you call a caution. So I don't fault the decision of NASCAR in the moment to call that caution. You've got to, right? The safety of people involved and watching this race is obviously more important than the competitive aspect of what happens on the track. No complaints about that. Where I can have some complaints is, like, should NASCAR have had a way before this, man? Like, should that have been part of the contingency plan? And I'm not involved in those. Like, I'm not a logistics person that works for NASCAR. So fair to me. I don't know. Maybe if they considered some other alternatives where this wouldn't have been a possibility or, real concern. it just feels to me like you really messed with the flow of what was getting really good at the time. You had, different strategies playing out. You had cars kind of coming and going. Like, you were really in a good groove, and now it's a caution, and it's not even because of an incident on the track. It's because of something outside the racetrack and an emergency vehicle that needs to cross this course that you constructed. So I was a little disappointed in that, but again, in the moment, like, no, you have to call the caution. You have to get the person the medical help that they need without any questions. No questions asked, right? Past that, I have a much bigger problem with the caution not being called at the end of the race. Cody Ware slams into the tires. Last, 2 laps to go. SVG's leading. And they hold this thing for more than 30 seconds. And he smashed into the tires at 90-something miles an hour. By the way, very scary crash. Very thankful that he's all right and there's no issues there. And you go back and, the best explanation I heard from trying to listen around to what people had to say, from the NASCAR standpoint, is that they didn't see what was happening because they're watching on monitors. They didn't see what was happening. And if they'd have seen how hard he crashed, they'd have called the caution right away. But they thought maybe he'll be able to back up like Kyle Larson did a couple years ago. Like, I honestly don't think that's a great excuse, man. Like, you're NASCAR, you're in charge of these things. You have, the governing body that you are. Like, you've got to find a way to make sure you've got your eyes on everything. And I understand, like, there's 12 different corners and you're trying to watch all of them. Have more people involved, man. But, like, when a car slams in that fast, and okay, you know what? If you didn't see it live, you've got to have the capabilities to go, wait a minute, we got a car in the tires quickly. Somebody roll that back 30 seconds. Let's see how that happened. In the moment, like, instantly. Like, that's your job, right? You have people who are live watching to call a caution if needed. To have the race end that way was just so disappointing. And look, I think SVG was a deserving winner, and I do think, part of me wouldn't have wanted to see another restart because you could have had some real fluky kind of shuffle around, guys banging into each other, and now we get a winner who was in 5th, and that's not always my favorite way to decide a race like this. I like organically things playing out. But to hold it for that long when everybody's looking at the TV going, he's not moving. Like, he's not getting out of there. And then to call it when the white flag drops, it looked like, okay, they wanted SVG to win. I don't think that's actually the case. I'm not a big the sport is rigged guy. But it was a bad look. And so, we've had these conversations far too often. I'll give them a little bit of a pass when it happens at a road course or a street course like this, that it's not the same logistical setup that they're used to. So I do think that needs to be considered. But at the same time, if you want the sport to continue to grow and get better, you can't have things like this happening. And, I really think NASCAR needs to take a hard look at their officiating process. I think they have. I think they've made things better at times. This was another one that slipped through the cracks, and it was a disappointing end to what was otherwise, I thought, a really good road course race. So SVG wins it. The playoff conversation is fascinating, right? We talk about it, and I was on the record as saying, I don't think he should begin with 1 win, finishing 30th in points. Well, now he's got 2 wins, so it's like, well, what do you have to say about that? That's, 2 wins? Yeah, you know what? He's probably deserving to be in the playoff. Now, I know people want a point system. A lot of fans want a point system that doesn't rely on wins at all, and I understand that, and I wouldn't be fully opposed to it. But NASCAR loves what they've done with the win and end stuff. It adds a lot of drama. It keeps guys engaged. If you're 28th in points, in week 12, there's not a whole lot left for you to do, right? Other than maybe move up here and there. This gives you hope. It gives you an opportunity. The 2-win thing for us, it's undeniable. And look, he has a massive advantage anytime he goes to one of these tracks. We're going to Sonoma next week. He's going to have another advantage. There's no doubt. So I understand all of it. It's a unique conversation. I think at the very least, with the SVG specific part of it, we got to put this on pause and let this thing play out a little bit. Because right now, he's looking unbeatable at these places. I say all that to say, we're going to Sonoma. Anything can happen in a race, right? There's no guarantee he's going to win. He's going to be a heavy favorite. I do think, as I said before, he's got more of an advantage at the places that the Cup drivers haven't seen as much. Chicago is one of those examples. Mexico City was another. Sonoma's not. The Cup drivers have seen Sonoma plenty. So I do think maybe we get somebody who comes up and challenges SVG next week, but he's going to be the favorite, no doubt. So if I'm picking a winner, yeah, I'm going to pick SVG again. I have much better chance of picking him. It's like picking Tiger Woods against the field in the mid-2000s. Yeah, somebody else might win the tournament, but if you want a real chance to be right, then you probably should pick Tiger. So I'm going to go SVG, but I'm looking forward to it. I've been enjoying this little road course section of the play, of the season. I like the technicalities. I like the strategy, and maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. So that'll do it. Another episode, 4 Tire Change. Continue to like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back next week recapping SOnoma. But until then, enjoy another race weekend.